Hello and welcome everybody who will be watching this live, as well as those who will be watching the recording version that's going to be posted on YouTube. So I'd like to welcome everybody. This training is called A Superhero Guide to Self-Awareness, Enneagram and the Avengers. For those of you who don't know me, I'll just give a little kind of recap to know who I am. Again, my name is Tim Duffy. I'm the founder of Electus Society. What is our mission? It's really about developing conscious leaders with real world skills. I've been a leadership trainer and a life coach and a Reiki master for over 20 plus years. I was part of the team to help grow the National Society of Leadership and Success to over 1 million members. I managed and coached over 600 people during my tenure there. I also was a former head coach for Landmark Worldwide for several years. I managed and coached hundreds of other people. And so that just gives you a little background on my experience. And so what are we going to be talking about today's presentation? This presentation is all about a couple of outcomes. It's all about personal development, but before I begin in talking about the Enneagram, I'm going to talk about the big 5 traits of personality. And this is why it's so important, is because this is what you study and learn in psychology. It is the most well-established, studied scientific personality assessment. And so if psychology uses this as the foundation, I think we should always start there. And then we're going to jump into Enneagram. Now, this is not my first time doing a training about this topic. I did another training many years ago called High Performance Communication for Friends, Families, and Foes. It's actually one of the first trainings if you watch all the different trainings from Electus Society and want to do the different levels, level 1. And but what I consider this as a training as an additional training, like it goes much more in depth that I didn't have time to go into that training. And so it's hard to remember 9 different personality types or communication styles or Enneagram types. And so I created this little mnemonic device to help me remember the 9. And so it goes like this: perfection gives performers romantic or idealistic notions, right? So that's the first kind of sentence to help me remember. And the second one is investigating loyal skeptics provides pleasurable protection. And then for the 9th one, I just had plus mediation because I couldn't have a sentence with that one. So each of these are different types of personalities. And I'm going to be using Marvel's Avengers and superheroes to actually explain each one of them, just very briefly. But each one of them I'm going to dive deep into. What is the false belief that they have, that their life experience shaped them, that they came to believe something, and this became their operating procedure, right? But unfortunately, based on that experience, they lost a fundamental truth about humanity and our experience in this world. And so this is what it shares. And as a result, this is how this type survives. This is what they focus on. These are their strengths and weaknesses. What are their blind spots, as well as what is their communication style. But again, Electus Society is all about developing you personally and professionally with real world skills. So I wanted to do this training for expanding your awareness, right? Expanding your consciousness. Where are you weak? Where are you to develop so that you can be a more successful person in whatever endeavor you choose to do? And so doing and looking at this Enneagram can really help with that. The book that this training is based on as part of our monthly leadership library series as part of Electus Society is this book, The Essential Enneagram, the definitive personality test as a self-discovery guide. And what really attracted to me to this book, because there's a lot of books about Enneagram, but I love that fact that it has 25 years of scientifically grounded Enneagram insights in this book. So that is what was pretty awesome, that it had a personality self-assessment and it could actually go into detail so that we're building this Enneagram based on a strong, solid foundation. And also I wanted to share with you who I dedicate this presentation to. It's Marissa Levin. And I just wanted to thank her because she served as my mentor for a period of time. And she helped me navigate an issue that I was having with a team member. And she expanded my awareness. And she talked about how important it was to understand the Enneagram. And I've heard about the Enneagram. And I thought that this is something that that like directors and movie producers and screenwriters would use to help develop characters, but she really emphasized on the limitations of each personality type, and so that it is an area for self-development and growth. And she just really changed my whole perspective on understanding how to manage people. So I'm forever grateful to her, and because she talked about the Enneagram, she inspired me to get this book and read it. So I want to thank Marissa for basically that mentorship and all of her lessons. So let's talk, and before we go into the main heart of this presentation, as you know, I always love to do a 2-minute grounding meditation. Not only is this for everybody who's listening, but it's also for myself, right? So that we can, get grounded, be present, that we really tap into our higher selves, and that anything that comes through this meeting is meant to be heard for you so that you can personally benefit. All right. And so that we open up our minds, open up our ears so that we can actually listen. So I'm going to turn off my camera. It's going to be a 2-minute grounding meditation. Don't skip it, right? It's worth it. Let's do it.
Welcome to this mindful moment of stillness. Let's take these next 2 minutes to find peace and presence within ourselves. First, I want you to find a comfortable seat. Feel free to sit on a chair, on the floor, or anywhere you feel grounded and at ease. Gently close your eyes or lower your gaze, whatever feels right for you. Now, take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Feel the air moving through your nostrils, filling your lungs, and then leaving your body. Allow your breathing to find its natural rhythm without trying to change or control it. As we enter into this moment of stillness, give yourself permission to be here, fully, in the now. This is your time, a precious pause from the hustle of your day. I invite you to bring your attention to your thoughts. As thoughts come into your mind, simply observe them. Imagine they are like clouds passing in the sky, coming and going, without you needing to hold on to them. If you find your mind wandering, it's okay. It's natural. Gently guide your focus back to your breath, feeling the rise and fall of your chest, or the air entering and exiting your nostrils. Remember, there is no right or wrong way to do this. It's all about observing, not judging. You're simply noticing what's happening within you, moment by moment. As we come to the end of this meditation, take one more deep breath in and out. Bring a gentle smile to your face, acknowledging the peace you've brought to yourself in just these 2 minutes. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes or lift your gaze. Take this sense of calm and mindfulness with you as you continue with your day. Thank you for joining me in this mindful moment of stillness. May you carry this calmness and presence with you.
Namaste. All right, so let's jump into it. So first we would start off with a foundation of the big 5 traits of personality. And so how I remember all the big 5 traits is this acronym ECON. I also learned a new acronym that it also goes by OCEAN, which is all the same letters. But it stands for extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, openness to experience, and neuroticism. So I'm just going to briefly go over these. So extroversion, on the one extreme, we have somebody who's very outgoing, excitable, very expressive. I use an example of Jim Carrey. The other is an introvert. That would be somebody who's much more quiet, thoughtful, and reserved. And I use the example of Keanu Reeves. So when it comes to agreeableness, on one extreme, we have somebody who's very cooperative, kind, very affectionate, very thoughtful, right? Always considerate of others, always down to just agree with whatever's going on. But on the other extreme, we have somebody who's very disagreeable, somebody who's very self-focused, very assertive, and a little bit insensitive, right, to the thoughts and feelings of other people because they're focused on themselves. Again, I used characters from the famous TV show Big Bang Theory, Leonard on the left and Sheldon Cooper on the right. Then we have the term conscientiousness, right? And for all of you who are Harry Potter fans, just like me, you have the character Hermione. She would be an example of somebody who's highly conscientious, very organized, very detailed, very disciplined. You could just tell she has a list of to-do lists and doesn't feel complete until she checks everyone and crosses them off. And on the other extreme, we have somebody with low conscientiousness or unconscientiousness is somebody like Ron Weasley, who's just very relaxed, easily distracted, likes to procrastinate, etc. And then for somebody who's openness to experience, if you know the actress, famous person, Whoopi Goldberg, she was in an older movie called Sister Act, where she played a nun who has to go into hiding in order to, because she witnessed a murder and she needs to testify. But she's like a fish out of water, right? She's a Las Vegas, Nevada singer. So she's somebody who's very high in openness, very curious, very creative, very adventurous. And then on the other extreme, you have this character played by Maggie Smith, who is low in openness. They're just like resistant. They just don't like change, very closed off to new ideas, just likes to keep it slow and steady exactly the way it is and keep it going that way. And then the last one for N is neuroticism. So I use characters from the TV show Game of Thrones, where you have Samuel Tully, who's, again, high anxiety, somebody who's very emotional. Again, and it's not just emotional, it could be extremes in different emotions, right? It can be different moody. On the other extreme, we have somebody who has very low neuroticism. That means they're not really affected emotionally, right? They can just be very stable, calm, relaxed in whatever, crisis is happening. Right? That's played by character Tywin Lannister. So again, these are just movie characters to explain these different traits. So now let's jump into the Enneagram. So remember that mnemonic device I shared with you? Perfection gives performers romantic and idealistic notions. So again, the first Enneagram type is somebody called the perfectionist. The second is somebody called the giver. The third is the performer, and the fourth is a romantic or an idealist. All right. Now remember the second phrase: investigating loyal skeptics provides pleasurable protection. So again, the number 5 in terms of the Enneagram type is somebody who is an investigator. Another term is observer. For number 6, it's a loyal skeptic. So I have this person who's like, seems very loyal, doing the salute, but you could just see her face. She's still very skeptical. And then you have somebody, number 7, is the pleasure seeker, right? Who's just enjoying life. There's another term that some Enneagrams will refer to this as like the epicure or the enthusiast. I just like the pleasure seeker because it's just easier for me to remember. And 8 is the protector, right? And I just use that symbol of a shield. And then the last one, 9, is the mediator or mediation. Again, someone who's resolving conflict. Sometimes they also noted as the peacemaker. So let's dive into each one of these types and what Marvel superheroes represent each of these characters. So the first one is the perfectionist. So I chose 2 people, Captain America and Chadwick Boseman, who plays T'Challa, right? The Black Panther. So I'm going to give you an example of these. Now, according to the Big 5 trait, from my perspective, somebody who's a perfectionist has high levels of conscientiousness, but also about a low degree of agreeableness, because they're always going to do what's right, even if it upsets other people. right? So if you've ever seen Captain America, the first Avenger, he's this scrawny kid who goes through training, and he always does what's right. So when there was a grenade that was pulled by one of the soldiers and thrown, and everyone could have been destroyed, guess what Captain Rogers does? He jumps on the grenade himself to help the other soldiers survive, because it's all about doing what's right in the moment, even if it means sacrificing yourself. Again, thank goodness the grenade was a dummy grenade, but it just goes to share with you his character. When it comes to Black Panther, again, if you've ever seen the movie, T'Challa, there's one time where he goes into this dreamlike state where he connects with his ancestors. And what they discover is Wakanda is this very successful country with all these mineral resources, but they do not share it with the world. And I'm not going to spoil the movie, but you have to really watch it, where there's a character who ends up getting killed, and the leaders of Wakanda, they hide it and they gloss over it, and T'Challa basically criticizes them because he has a very high moral center. There's a clear right and wrong, and he says all of you were wrong. You should have not turned your backs on the rest of the world. You shouldn't kept the Wakanda only to ourselves. You needed to share this wealth and this knowledge and experience with the rest of the world. So again, those are two characters that really demonstrate this perfectionist. So because of their environment and their experience, perfectionists came to believe something. Think of it as their operating system, right? Their programming. They believe that good behavior is always expected. And if you engage in bad behavior, you are punished. So therefore, you're not really accepted as who you are, which is unfortunate. But what they've really done is they lost a fundamental truth. And this is what I really find really interesting about this book and how it highlights we are all perfect just as we are. And I know that that might seem harsh for some people, but we're talking about, let's just use the term consciousness. What is consciousness? It means awareness. And so we all look at different humans as having different levels of consciousness. What does that mean? The consciousness of a 5-year-old isn't the same as the consciousness of a 50-year-old or a 90-year-old. Why? It's because life and experience has taught them that there are consequences to their actions. And so if you're a 5-year-old, you grab a glass of milk and you spill it, and you're like, and you get yelled at, you're like, oh my goodness, this is wrong. And it's like, I never have to do this again. But I'm like, you were 5 years old. You didn't have the awareness, the dexterity to like hold the glass. And so you started to live your whole life like that. But as you get older, you now understand, well, what is the impact of me spilling the glass? Oh, I can make a mess. I have to clean it up. And so what you end up doing is you become much more careful. So again, what if, we're going to talk about this later in the presentation, what if we're all different souls with all different consciousness, and we have to have different life experiences to actually learn from our mistakes. So therefore, everybody's perfect exactly the way they are. Even if they make mistakes, well, can't you always see that there's a blessing in part of making that mistake? Isn't there a learning lesson to be had? So again, from all my training in Landmark, one of the things that they said is we are all perfectly imperfect. So it means accepting us just as we are. And that's what perfectionists lost the sight of. And so they're always trying to make everything perfect. They're always trying to be perfect, and it can be exhausting. I know, because that was one of my personality types, and that's because when I was younger, I got programmed. When my older brother yelled at me for not doing what I was supposed to do, I felt unloved, and then I said, well, I need to be perfect in order to not be hurt. And so that became my survival. I only recognized later on in my life that that was not a good programming, and it actually helped me benefit in some areas in terms of professional success, but it also hurt me in other areas. As those of you in Elect Society have heard, it made me a very bad manager, which I had to change that programming and learn from. So how does a perfectionist survive? They do it by gaining love, by just being good, right? By being responsible and being very conscientious, right? And so what they focus on is like, there's a very clear right, and then there's a very clear wrong. And they tend to focus on everything that needs to be corrected. Now, remember how I shared with you on this perfectionist example, how I used two famous superheroes, Captain America and T'Challa, and it almost seemed as if the perfectionist is something good or a good attribute to have because they're always about doing what's right and wrong. But here's what I find so fascinating about not only studying personality types, but also Marvel superhero movies, which I'm a big fan of, is that in one extreme, that good behavior can actually push you to the dark side. There is a dark side of being a perfectionist. And one of my favorite Marvel movies, and I'm just going to go off on this tangent, is Guardians of Galaxy Volume 3. And that there's this villain played by this high evolutionary. And if you know the plot, he keeps trying to make the perfect race, like the perfect animal species where they'll have a peaceful society. Sounds familiar, like in history, right? And so what ends up happening is at one of the major scenes when there's a big fight in the climax, and his face gets ripped apart. And Rocket, one of the characters is confronting him, and he says, listen, all that I did, what was for what? All I wanted to do was make things perfect, right? Like, so the villain himself was saying, why are you stopping me from doing what I was meant to do? This is a positive thing. I just wanted to make things perfect. And then, boom, Rocket just drops the mic and he says, no, you just hated the things the way that they are. And so, isn't that a mind blowing shift, right? That in order for you to always focus on perfection, it means you have a high hate and disgust for the way that things are. You've lost touch with the greater universal force that everybody's perfect exactly the way they are. And this is all part of the learning and growing experience, right? And you're trying to force it upon people. Okay, this could actually lead into a whole discussion about politics, but I'll save that. But I think you guys get the idea. So, what are the strengths of people who are perfectionists? I would say number one, it's integrity, meaning if they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. You can always count on them, right? Because they're very conscientious. But here's their weakness: they're constantly trying to see perfection in everything, and that makes them overly critical, not only of themselves, of themselves, but also overly criticizing everybody else. Everybody's not perfect, everybody's not doing what they're supposed to do, and it's exhausting, both to be the person who's the perfectionist as well as the person who's on the receiving end of being constantly criticized. Remember how I talked about my manager experience? I used to destroy the motivation and enthusiasm of some of my team members. I'm like, because under high stress, you had to be perfect. And it ruined them, And so that was my weakness that I had to work on. And my favorite thing that also is in the Enneagram is the blind spots. What is the blind spot of the perfectionist? Is they can't see the gray zone. They don't realize that all they view life is just black and white. It's, it's either this or that. And it's like, no, there is so much gray area, but they don't want to operate in that gray area. But that's the way the world is. And sometimes, or oftentimes, because they're trying to be perfect so much, they try to suppress their own needs and desires. Are any of you perfectionist? Does this resonate, right? And the way that they communicate, it's always being precise, right? How did you like that movie? Precisely. I liked it on a scale of 7 out of 10. Instead of just saying it was amazing, it was awesome. No, exactly 7. 1 being poor, 10 being excellent. They're very clear in their communication. They're very direct, and they're very clear on the right and wrong. Now, their goal, your goal, if you're a perfectionist, for your own personal development, right? Personal and professional development, is just understand that we are perfect just as we are. And there is more than one way to do something, right? In the perfect aspect, there's only the right way to do something. But again, that leaves no room for innovation, trying new things, doing things in a different way, and it could end up being better, right? You have to learn to accept yourself, and you have to learn to accept others, even though that voice is still there. But it's not perfect. It's just say, can you accept it as good enough? Otherwise, you'll be in this constant cycle. All right. So let's move on to the second Enneagram type, which is Spider-Man. Okay, and as demonstrated in this famous movie, the first Spider-Man movie featuring Tom Holland as the Spider-Man, called Homecoming. So according to the big five trait of personality, this would be the giver in the Enneagram type is somebody who's highly agreeable, right? They also have a little degree of high neuroticism, right? A little anxiety, emotional sensitivity, but they're also very open. Okay. So here's Tom Holland playing Spider-Man. So in this movie, if you haven't seen it, Tom is just a high school kid, and there's a famous party at Liz Allen's house, and so his friend is telling him, what would make you cool and make the girl like you, Liz, is if you could tell them that you're friends with Spider-Man and that he's going to do a guest visit and visit the party, and so he brings his suit, underneath his clothes, and he's there at the party, already. After he's there for a while, he goes onto the roof, he changes into Spider-Man, and he's debating, should I do this or not? And he's like, but I could actually get the girl, I could actually make her like me, I could be popular, all these other things just by showing that I'm friends with Spider-Man. But because the giver is so focused on other people, he sometimes, or she sometimes, or they sometimes neglect themselves. So as he's sitting on the roof, he sees a big explosion in the park that's near him. And instead of, with his best friend waiting for him for Spider-Man's guest appearance, guess what he does? He leaves the party. He sacrifices what he wants, and he goes to the party. And if those of you who are a little bit older, non-traditional, who've ever seen the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, they had a Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. There's a famous scene where Tobey Maguire struggles. He's like, am I not entitled? Am I not able to have what I want? And it's just a big struggle for the giver who is always trying to help other people. So what did the giver come to believe that was false? Okay, for them, they learned in life is that in order to get something, to get love, to be appreciated, they have to give first. It doesn't mean that's always the case, but that's how they believe, right? They must be needed in order to be loved. But guess what? That's a programming. That's not the truth. The fundamental truth is everyone needs are equally met, right? That's really hard for some people to understand. Everyone's needs are equally met in the natural flow of giving and receiving. And so the only way that I could see this is that, like, if you look at nature and you see squirrels, like, oh my goodness, can you imagine being the squirrel that's constantly worried, like, what if I never get enough acorn nuts in order to survive? It's like, no, nature provides everything. All you just have to do is search it and just finds a way, But sometimes, some people who are givers, they're always focusing on other people instead of focusing on themselves. And that's the only way that they feel that they can actually get love. But it's not true, right? There's a natural flow of giving and receiving, but the giver actually forgot about the receiving part. I've shared with you in previous Electus Society trainings about how I read the book No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's about the super nice guys, which I used to be, and it said how, stop that. You have to be able to advocate for what you want and what you're interested in, and it was very helpful. It transformed my relationships with my wife, and also, just in my relationships with friends and coworkers, right? How do givers survive? They try to avoid disappointing other people, right? What they tend to focus on constantly the needs of others instead of themselves, which is not good. Okay, it's okay to help other people, but we're talking about, right, that fine line between helping each other or like sacrificing yourself, meaning, like, like in the airplane where they say you got to put your oxygen mask first before helping other people. The giver would sacrifice himself, try to be giving all the oxygen masks, and then faint because they didn't put it on themselves. That's the giver in that extreme. So what is their strengths? These people are very friendly, super helpful, very generous. We're so lucky to have these people in our lives. But what is their weakness? They tend to be needy from unmet emotional needs. And guess what happens when you're needy and have unmet emotional needs, you start to develop resentment. Dun dun dun. Not good, right? And you end up having like it's almost like a steam pot, like it builds up, and then poof, you have an emotional outburst, which can't be good. Why? It's because you tried to like a pressure cooker. You try to suppress your own emotions, your own desires so much that it can't help but explode. And that can't be good. So, what is their blind spots? They sometimes don't even know what they want. They don't even know their own needs. And because they're oftentimes so obsessed with other people, they can actually force themselves and be, they use the word intrusive in other people's lives. How can I help you? How can I get involved? It's like, nobody asked you. But again, they're not listening to their higher selves. They're responding from a programming of just doing this in order to get their emotional needs filled, right? So, what is their communication style? Very open people, very expressive, highly sensitive, right? Because they're highly sensitive to the thoughts and feelings of other people. High energy, right? Very expressive, great people to hang out with. What is the goal of your own personal and professional development if you're a giver? You need to become much more self focused without the guilt. And that is the hardest part, right? I remember in the No More Mr. Nice Guy book, they basically said you have to do something for your own selfish desires with the understanding that you're going to upset other people. No, I'm a people pleaser. The giver's the people pleaser. They don't want to upset other people, but nope, it's not good. You have to develop that muscle. And that was mind blowing. And it transformed my relationship, right? Because guess what happens? The moment that you start advocating for yourself, the resentment goes down. You stop creating all these rules in your head. If I only do this for this person, then they'll love me and then they'll do that. But then guess what happens? You end up doing these things and then nothing happens. And you're like, hey, what's wrong? I have this false belief, they don't think it's false. They think it's true that if I just do things for other people, that they're supposed to do things for me, and it doesn't. And then they get mad and they get angry, right? So it's also whenever you're asked for something, you don't always have to say yes. You can you can either accept a request, you can decline a request, or you can counteroffer a request. And so for these individuals, if you're a giver, you have to practice, develop that muscle of saying no much more to people and their requests. Even if you love them, even if you care about them, what is the consequences? What are your needs? That's the goal of self-development. Okay, so next, let's talk about the performer. So who's the example of the performer? Tony Stark from the Iron Man. Okay, so what are some of the big five traits of Tony Stark and these types of performers? Or another term for them is they're achievers. They're low in neuroticism, so they're very stable, not very big on the emotional extremes. They're highly conscientious. Why? Because they get stuff done, to-do lists, get it all done, but they're also low in agreeableness. There's a lot of similar traits between the perfectionist as well as the performer, right? Because they're about getting things done and they're not trying to make other people happy. They're just trying to get those results. This reminds me in my last training, high performance communication, we talk about dominance or disc. That's really in that category of the performer. So, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, what ends up happening to Tony Stark, he sells missiles and things to the government, and he's in another foreign country. There's some explosions, and he ends up getting hurt. A lot of shrapnel hit him. He faints, and then guess what happens? He ends up going into a cave, and then there's this doctor that does everything to save his life. And how did he save his life? He created this little magnet thing that constantly keeps the fragments of metal from getting through his bloodstream and through his heart. And so Tony Stark is able to survive. But guess what? He's a performer. He doesn't accept his fate. He can't live his whole life based on connected to a battery. So he uses ingenuity, intuitiveness, his brilliance as engineer and stuff like that. And with all the parts in there in the cave, he actually builds his own little mini arc to constantly keep that metal out of his heart and his bloodstream. And then now that he's fixed his heart, what does he do? He needs to get out of the cave. He can't sit still. He can't just wait to be rescued. He rescues himself. And so that's when he builds the first prototype of the Iron Man suit and is able to escape. So this is the kind of personality that the performer is. So what did the performer, is that false belief that they came to believe? They believe that only one's individual efforts gets rewarded. So that's why they're constantly in the do mode, right? They think that it doesn't matter who you are. What matters is what you do. Okay, and that is a fundamental mistake. To me, this is really hard for me to kind of accept this, because I'm a part of me is being a performer, right? Because you want to get stuff done, but the fundamental truth is everything works and gets done naturally according to universal laws, right? And I know for some people that might be a hard pill to swallow, especially it was for me. But I'm just going to use an example with my job at work, right? What if you're a performer, right? And all you're focused on is getting things done, and you're just like, I have to get stuff done. And as a result, you end up pushing people, forcing people to do things that they don't want to do because you're so focused and stressed out about getting the results. And even if you get the results that you wanted, but you burned people out, you upset other people, do you think that company wants to keep you around? No. Right? But you're saying, well, Tim, what if we actually fail and not achieve the goal? Well, guess what? I can share from my own personal experience as a high performer. I have performed, I have exceeded goals, and there have been times where I failed and did not meet my goals. And those times I thought I was going to be fired, right? Like, you didn't hit your goal. But guess what I discover, right? What managers really want is open honesty and transparency, because if you're not so focused just simply on the goal, and you're trying to be somebody that can contribute and do your best, if you're honest with your managers, like, hey, I don't think we're going to hit the goal, and these are the reasons why, and this is what I think we can do differently. Can I get help and support from you to help me achieve that goal? Well, guess what? Now their managers invested in with you to help achieve a goal. And then what if they work together and they still don't achieve that goal? Well, all they want to know is that you did your best, right? And even if they didn't achieve their goal, they'll have an evaluation. It's like, well, we didn't achieve the goal, but what can we learn from this? What can we do differently? How can we make it better? That's the type of performer you want to be, right? And so therefore, your attitude, who you are as a person, will make that difference on whether that company keeps you around, even if you didn't actually hit those goals. So I hope that actually provides some clarity for some people who are constantly afraid of their job. Like, if I don't hit my goals, I'm going to be fired. It's like, no, yes, hit your goals, but there's more to life. There's more to who you are than just performance and getting stuff done. Okay. How do they survive? Get stuff done. Just always be active, always be busy. Unfortunately, some of these people are workaholic martyrs, and it's exhausting. Nobody wants to be around a workaholic martyr. Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, I can't do this. It's like, shut up. Be quiet, right? For some of them, it's all about competition. I have to win. But remember, competition can be very good in a certain capacity because it can drive you, but it also can be ugly, right? Because many times what you need to do to be successful is not to be an individual performer, but actually a collaborator. Somebody that 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 actually equals 3, because you work together. So everything is in balance. This person is always focused on achievement, getting the awards, getting the recognition, and they're burned out, and it's exhausting. Let's see, what did they focus on? Promoting themselves because they have to look good, right? They're always focused on the task and the goals. Does this resonate with anybody? Is anybody a high performer? I feel sorry. You probably achieve a lot, but you probably also experience burnout too. So what is the strengths and weaknesses of the performer? The strengths is leadership, right? They're the ones who have the courage, have the confidence. They believe in achieving the goals. They're willing to do those risks, to make things happen. They want to do things quick and efficiently. And it's nice sometimes to have those leaders who can really get stuff done, right? Can are movers and shakers, as we would say. But what is the weaknesses of performers? They can be very impatient, especially under high stress. They try to do too much, right? And then guess what? By trying to do much, then you don't have high performance in a few things. You have low performance in a lot of things, which is not good, right? What are their blind spots is failure. Okay, they just don't want to fail, and because they're so obsessed with the goal, they may not even realize that they're going to fail, right? So that's why it's so important. The next thing is their own internal emotions, right? Because they don't even know what their own internal emotions are. They're so focused on the goal that they're neglecting how they feel. And guess what? They're often neglecting other people's emotions on how they feel. And their communication style is very direct to the point. It's very fast paced, and they're very confident, when they speak, even though they could be wrong. They speak with such confidence that people actually believe them, right? Do you know any people that are like that? The other thing is, what is the goal for their own personal and professional development? They need to know that love comes not from what you do, but who you are. That's how love comes. Okay. And landmark, for those of you who have done that, it's your way of being. Okay. So what they need to do, if you're a high performer and it's always go, 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 the advice is slow down. Slow down, smell the roses, be a little patient, things will happen. Okay. The next is the romantic, right? Performance gives no, perfectionist gives performers romantic and idealistic notions. So who would be the characters that represent the romantic idealist? It would be Loki and the Scarlet Witch, right? Wanda, I forget her last name, something like Russian or something like that. Wanda Rosmanoff. I don't know how to pronounce it, but you know who it is. Scarlet the Witch, Wanda. So, what is the big five traits personality of a loyal skeptic? Well, they're very outgoing, right? So they're high extrovert, but guess where? Their neuroticism is really, really high. That's why they're experiencing so much anxiety, right? They're open, high in openness experience, and very low in tend to be too conscientious. They could be on the spectrum of conscientious. This is just from my perspective, but just know that every person is unique and different and can have all these different levels. But in this case, in the movie Thor, this is the example that I wanted to share about Loki. In this, if you're not familiar with Thor, the movie that came out many years ago, the bad guys are these frost giants. There's this one character, Laufey, and then the apparently good guys are the Asgardians, right? Where Odin, played by the famous actor Anthony Hopkins, and you have Thor. They're all Asgardians, and they've been at war with these frost giants. And and so what ends up happening is Loki actually discovers that these frost giants, he's actually part. I don't know if he's part or full. He just has genetic material of a frost giant, and he didn't know that. And he was actually adopted by the Asgardians. So he already feels like an outsider. And as a result, throughout the movie, you have to really watch it. But the whole movie is about Loki doing these crazy, unbelievable things. But why does he do them? It's because he has this deep need inside to be loved, right? To be accepted by his father. And at one moment, one scene, he's like, I could have done it, Father. I could have done it. I've done it. I did it for you, And he's like, no, Loki. Again, so the emotional need, that abandonment, that these loyal, romantic idealists have, forgive me if I said loyal skeptic, these romantic idealists have, is that there's something missing inside of them. And then in the example of Wanda, in as the Scarlet Witch, she appeared in Avengers Infinity Wars and after Endgame. And then, so if you don't know the plot of the movies, Wanda is really starting to develop a relationship with Vision, who has this Infinity Stone right here in his head. And what ends up happening is that he, in order to prevent Thanos, the bad guy, from getting that stone, he asks Wanda to destroy the stone, which means sacrificing himself. And so she ends up doing it. And even after she does it, a Vision dies through other different ways. And that's devastating for her. And so once the series ends, they actually created another series on Disney Plus where it's called WandaVision, and it's all about Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, dealing with that trauma of losing that person. So it's about a series of show where she creates this fantasy world, and it goes through the different sitcoms from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, all the way to the present, because she's created this artificial world to imagine just to be happy. Okay, so these are the romantic idealists. So what is this false thing that they came to believe? They believe that people have to experience loss and pain. Okay, they have a sense of abandonment, and there's something in their life that they're missing something. Do you know anybody that's like that, right? What they've really lost as a fundamental truth is that everybody has a deep and complete connection to all things. You've just forgotten it, right? For some people, it would mean you have a soul, you have a higher self. For some people who are very spiritual or religious, it would be like you're connected to the creator, the all-being consciousness, the collective consciousness of the universe. But even though you're alone in your room, you feel like you're alone, but you don't realize that there are people around you that love you, even though you're all alone. That you are connected to things that you can't even see with the spectrum of our eyesight, and so you've forgotten that. And so that's how you show up in the world. So how do you survive that programming that you have to experience as loss? You're constantly searching for the ideal love, right? Or you're constantly searching for the perfect situation to feel complete, right? Have you ever find those people who are constantly in a new relationship because they can't be alone with themselves? They need to feel loved. There's something inside of them that's longing for something. There's envy for what's missing in their life. And what they really focus on is they focus on positive stuff, but it's always not in the present. They're always focusing on positive stuff in the past or positive stuff in the future, right? These type of romantic idealists, they're always about looks and aesthetics and, oh my goodness, this is the most beautiful thing. Did you see my new table that I bought? Oh, have you seen this new artwork that I see? Oh, I have to have you try the best restaurant, because they're always about having the most amazing, exciting experience, right? Because they're searching for that perfect, moment. You guys know people like this. Maybe you even are like this, right? They're always searching for what's deeply touching or moving. Oh, did you see this artwork? Did you see that movie? Oh my God, it's the best movie. It's like, they keep searching for that perfection, right? So what are the strengths of a romantic idealist and the weaknesses? The strength of the romantic idealist is that they're very sensitive, right? Very, very creative people and very empathic, right? Understanding the emotions of others. What is the weakness? These are your friends that are overly dramatic. Often they're self-absorbed. They're constantly focusing about the self and how they feel, You almost sometimes want to say, snap out of it, focus on other people. You won't be so miserable and unhappy, right? Their blind spots is that they can't be happy in the present moment, right? They're always looking for something else, right? In the past or the future. And their blind spot is like they can't just accept what's ordinary, right? They can't just accept it as what it is, right? It has to always be the best or the perfect or the most amazing experience. Their communication style, very expressive, very personal, very self-focused. Their goal of their personal development is that they need to focus on the present moment. Stop living in the past. Stop living in the future. We are loved. Even though you can't see it, wake up, shake them, all right? You are whole and complete just the way you are. Stop focusing on the death of that family member who passed away. Stop focusing on that best friend who's left you and who's no longer your best friend. They were just in your life as part of a chapter, right? That chapter has ended. You're moving on to a new chapter. You're complete. Did you learn from that experience? Then it's complete, right? You know, that person who passed away, their soul lives on. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just transforms from one form to the other, right? People can connect, right? You feel the love. Sometimes you see people who've passed away in your dreams, and you have the most beautiful spiritual dreams. And what are the messages? Are usually like, "I love you. You're loved. You're cared about," right? So that stop searching for the ideal or perfection. That's the advice for the personal and professional development for the romantic idealist. Okay. So here's Enneagram type number 5, which is the, remember the phrase, investigating loyal skeptics provides pleasurable protection. The investigator or observer, I would use the example of Doctor Strange, one of the characters. He has high conscientiousness and low extroversion, right? These are people who are like your engineers, your scientists, the people who are all about the brain and logic and analyzing everything, the perfectionists, but they don't need to be around people because they're trying to solve problems, all right? That's Doctor Strange. So if you're not familiar with the story of Doctor Strange, he was a very successful surgeon, hand surgeon, right? Or not hand surgeon, he was just a surgeon, but he used his hands, and he was very intelligent, photographic memory. He was kind of like a rude guy because he, a little bit of ego, smartest person in the room, didn't have tolerance, always trying to, be the best and knowledgeable. But guess what happens? He gets into a car accident, and he ends up, it was a really bad car accident, and he damages his hands, and he can no longer hold his hands steady, and he can no longer be a surgeon, and now his identity has been destroyed. And so what does he do? He can't live life like this, and so he tries everything, tries all the different medical treatments, and he gets to the point that he has to start searching for out-of-the-box medical treatments that's not in traditional Western medicine. He meets a guy, and he says, "Oh my goodness, you were in an accident too, just like me. How did you survive?" He's like, "Well, I had to go to another country in the Far East and learn from these wise masters, and they were able to heal me." And he's like, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll have to try everything." And so he travels far and wide to meet these, wise teachers, these amazing people. And I'm actually going to show you a clip from the movie Doctor Strange. And so this clip really shows you the difficulty in having those people who are very left brain and logical to actually tap into the supernatural, right? Tap into the emotional, the spiritual aspect. They're so focused on the left brain that they can't really connect with the right. And so I hope you enjoyed this clip. Just a minute. Let's go.
You're a man looking at the world through a keyhole, and you've spent your whole life trying to widen that keyhole, to see more, to know more. And now, on hearing that it can be widened in ways you can't imagine, you reject the possibility.
No, I reject it because I do not believe in fairy tales about chakras or energy or the power of belief. There is no such thing as spirit. We are made of matter and nothing more. You're just another tiny, momentary speck within an indifferent universe.
You think too little of yourself.
Oh, you think you see through me, do you? Well, you don't. But I see through you. To me.
I pushed your astral form out of your physical form.
What's in that tea? Psilocybin? LSD?
It's just tea. With a little honey.
What just happened?
For a moment, you entered the astral dimension.
What?
A place where the soul exists apart from the body.
Why are you doing this to me?
To show you just how much you don't know. Open your eyes.
Ah, what a great clip, right? Whenever I see that clip, it reminds me of like traditional Western medicine and doctors. Like they view the human body as just a machine, just different cells. But there is so much more to consciousness and humans and science. If you're operating from that left brain of that logic only, you realize that the truth is right in front of you and just don't want to see it, right? What is the power of the placebo? It means in Western medicine is that you can actually take something and just through the power of your thoughts and your beliefs and attitudes, you can heal yourself on 30 to 50% based on various different studies, right? Especially if it's an illness that's related to something internal like emotions and stuff like that, or pain, which is just incredible. So if you're fascinated and want to learn more about consciousness and you're very left brain, you're very that investigator observer type, I recommend that you check out that training that I did a while ago on the Electus Society YouTube channel called Leader's Guide to Remote Viewing Research and the Future of 2040 to 2060. It's very fascinating where I cover a deep portion on what is consciousness, right? And what is consciousness from the scientific perspective and what the latest research on consciousness is. So it's very fascinating. All right, I hope you guys enjoy that. So let's get back to the investigator observer. What is this false belief that they came to believe in their whole life? They came to believe that the world demands too much of them. Why do you think they constantly seclude themselves? The world is too much, it's too demanding, so they need to seclude. It gives them very little, so that's why they're constantly trying to search for more information, more knowledge, and it's leaving people depleted, right? So that's why they have to protect themselves, because the world and people are so demanding of them that it'll deplete you, right? So protect yourself. But what they lost is this fundamental truth that for everybody in the whole entire world, there's a full supply of knowledge of everything that you need to know, right? You don't have to know the whole knowledge of the whole entire universe, but there's enough knowledge out there for you to be successful in whatever you do. And there's enough energy for everybody, okay? You don't have to be depleted. And so that's why it's like, you can come out of your shell. You don't have to lock yourself up in a laboratory. You can connect with the world, right? How these people tend to survive, they tend to be very private. They're like, I don't need anybody. I'm going to be self-sufficient, right? I need to protect myself from other different people, right? And what is my goal? I need to accumulate. I need to accumulate knowledge. I need to learn new things, learn new books. I have to tell you guys, I'm very much resonate with all these different personality types of Enneagram, and I actually resonate a little bit with this one too, because there's nothing that I wish more to just stay in my office and room and just read a bunch of books and learn something. But I'm so grateful to my wife because she's like, Tim, we need to take you outside. Let's go do these adventures. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'd rather read a book. I'd rather do a training. And it's like, but the moment I do, oh my goodness, I love it, right? Like, the world is amazing, and that gives me new ideas and inspires me to help other people. Or, oh wow, because of that conversation, I can now use that in my experience to help other people, right, in Electus Society and beyond. So again, sometimes I feel like these Enneagram things are for everybody, including myself. So how do these investigators or observers survive? We've already talked about that. But what do I focus on? What do these people focus on? It's they're focused on the intellectual domain, right? For them, I need facts. I need analysis. They can't trust somebody to say, "Oh my goodness, I felt this thing and it helped me. I had this herb and it transformed it, healed me." And they're like, "I don't believe it." They ignore that person. They're like, "We need to see the facts. Is there a double placebo blind study? Otherwise, I can't accept it." Is they're so focused on that left logical. Doesn't mean that that's not important, but they're obsessed with it. Okay. Their strengths is their knowledge. These are people who are very knowledgeable, have a lot of information. Their confidentiality, remember, because they respect privacy, right? Because they want to be private. They're dependable. You can always count upon them. But what is their weakness? They're emotionally cold and distant. Yikes. And sometimes they're overly analytical. To what should I do this? Should I do this or should I do this? I'm not sure. It's like I have to analyze. What are the pros? What are the cons? It's like, what do you feel? They can't do it. They can't trust their gut and intuition, their heart. You know, they have to analyze it. They're too much in their brain. Their blind spot is abundance, right? Because they feel, and that was an interesting thing. Abundance. What does that mean? That that's their blind spot. Maybe that they're blind to the whole world can provide them everything that they need. You don't have to be depleted. You know, all the knowledge is out there, right? Like you know, you can be complete. You don't have to come from this idea of lack. Self deprivation. Sometimes they deprive themselves of what they need and want. And their blind spot is the support of others. Maybe they're like, I don't need help from other people. It's like, no, yes, you do. You do need help. Stop being a solo operator and being a team player. Their communication style, get to the facts. They're very clear, to the point. They're very analytical, unemotional, right? I remember working with a student leader once, and I said, how do you feel about that? And he's like, I don't feel anything at all. And I'm like, okay, I'm talking to a high C, right? The investigator observer type. What do you think about that? Oh, I'll tell you what I think. I don't like it, but it's just because that word feeling didn't come naturally to them. So, what is their goal of their personal and professional development? That they will get a sufficient supply of energy and resources for everybody. You know, everybody can have access to a different supply of energy and resources. They need to express themselves. What do you feel? Okay, how are you feeling right now? Are you angry? Are you frustrated? Speak, right? They have to be vulnerable, right? They have to actually share with other people, and they have to practice not knowing everything. It's okay to not know. You can just trust. How many of you know people like this? I already have a couple people my friends, my mother-in-law's friends, people who are really, really like this. Okay, so next comes number 6, the loyal skeptic. Okay, this person, according to the Big Five trait theory, is low in agreeableness, low in extroversion, right? They're not very super outgoing, and low in openness. So I used examples from Guardians of a Galaxy, the character on the left played by Zoe Saldana, and then also the Scarlet Witch. No, not Scarlet Witch. Scarlett Johansson, who plays, Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow. So she would be, both of these characters, Gamora and Black Widow, represent the loyal skeptic. So I find the loyal skeptic very fascinating. So if we're talking about Gamora, the perfect scene that really demonstrates this is where she doesn't trust anybody. Is like Quill is playing music for her, and he's like, listen to the music, and she's like, yes, that has a nice melody, and they're dancing together slowly. She's like, I don't dance, and then as he moves in, he about to kiss her, and she pulls out a knife and puts it to his throat, and she says, get away from me, Peter Quill. I will not allow your she uses a funny term, pelvic sorcery against me. Again, she doesn't trust anybody. She doesn't bring anybody close to her, right? But if you've seen volumes 1, 2, and 3, Peter Quill gets the girl, which is nice. He wears her down. The next character, Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, in the movie The Avengers, what happens is there's a scene where Natasha is trying to recruit the Hulk, played by Bruce Banner. And Bruce Banner follows this little girl who seems to need help, and now she find themselves in a shack. The girl disappears, and it's Natasha Romanoff talking to Bruce Banner. And she says, we're all alone here. It's just you and me. I just want to talk. And they start talking. We need you to come in. We've always known where you were. And then at one point, Bruce Banner tries to test Natasha Romanoff. He's like, stop lying to me. And he slams his hand on the table. And Natasha Romanoff, basically, because she's a loyal skeptic, she actually doesn't trust. She actually had a gun underneath one of the tables. And she pulls it out and against him and is about to shoot him. And then he's like, no, take it easy. I was just testing you. And then she goes to her ear and she's like, don't worry, soldiers who are outside. It's okay. Everything, we're all clear. You don't need to come in. And there was all these soldiers out in the back. Isn't that the perfect example of where somebody who doesn't trust and always has a backup plan to be safe? So what is this about this loyal skeptic? What is this false belief that they came to believe? They just can't trust anybody. Okay, do you know any people like that who it's so hard to trust people? Probably because they got burned and hurt. For them, the world is unpredictable and dangerous, and you need to protect yourselves. I can identify as a loyal skeptic, again, in all of these different character or personality types. But here's the fundamental truth that they lost. We all begin with faith in ourselves, others, and the universe. We have that, okay? But we've kind of lost that, all right? You've lost the faith in humanity. You've lost your faith in your own ability, your own higher self to guide you. You've lost the faith in other people. And that's what you have to learn. So how does the loyal skeptic survive? They're constantly seeking security, and they need that certainty. Just whenever they have what they have, they doubt it. They have a question. I do this all the time. Like, everything's going well at work, and I'm like, but what could go wrong? Something bad could happen. It's like, oh, shut up, like, stop it. They're very good at obeying authority, right? And avoiding threats. But remember, their loyalty, but they're also very skeptical. So it's an extreme. So sometimes they're obeying authority, but then other times they defy authority, and then they see threats, and then they fight those threats. So it's this polarity that's really happening with the loyal skeptic. What they focus on is what could go wrong. They doubt themselves. They're testing, constantly testing. They just don't trust. Do you know anybody who says, this is what you need to do to be healthy? And they do it the right, but will it really make me healthy? I don't know. I'm not sure. They lost faith in themselves. They lost faith in their efforts, so that they need to learn to restore that faith. What is the strength of a loyal skeptic? They're loyal to you. Boy, do you like to have somebody who's a loyal skeptic, because they're trustworthy. They're always questioning. They're looking out for your best interests, especially if you're part of that close-knit group. They'll protect you and protect that family. But what is their weakness? They get stuck in doubt. Right? Just when everything is good, but what about this? Something bad could happen. They can oftentimes push others away by constantly contradicting and opposing them. Yes, but what if this doesn't work? And what if it's like, man, can you just relax? Like, let's just think positive for a second. It's like, no. And so it's like, oh, you're so disagreeable. Like, sometimes you just don't even want to deal with them, right? What are their blind spots? Is that if whatever you focus on, you bring more energy to. So they're magnifying the dangers, like, oh my goodness, the thing, bad, terrible things that could happen. And guess what? If you're focusing so much on magnifying dangers, then you end up putting yourself in a dangerous situation. You can't always see the positive of what's happening, right? Their communication style is rapid, hesitant, right? They tend to over-explain. They're very pessimistic, and they're very challenging, right? So what is the goal of the personal and professional development of somebody who's a loyal skeptic? You got to reclaim your faith. You got to reclaim your faith in yourself. You got to reclaim your faith in others. You have to have courage. And guess what? You can't control the outcome. You just have to keep taking positive action despite all the fears that you're facing, right? So give yourself freedom to just take positive actions so that you can go forth and be protected, all right? That's the personal and professional development for the loyal skeptic. All right. All right, we're down to, investigating the loyal skeptic provides pleasurable protection. So we're into 5, 6, 7. We're now into the pleasure seeker. Now, there's different names for the pleasure seeker. They could also be called the epicure, right? Because Epicurus was a famous philosopher who did the study of trying to find the pleasure of what it is to be a human. And so, and it became part of the language. Epicurean desires, meaning, all you want to care about is eating whatever you want, drinking whatever you want. But nobody really knows the true story of Epicure, because once you start researching the philosophy and history of Epicure, what he did is he did everything: sex, food, gluttony, drinking. And what he discovered after pursuing all that, happiness and joy, pleasure, guess what he discovered? all that really matters is, he said in one quote, is a good friend and a bread and some cheese. And I would actually happen to agree with that. But again, who is a character that demonstrates this person of a pleasure seeker? It was actually Shang-Chi, the movie, played by this character named Sean, right? Who also goes by the name of Shang-Chi. He's very outgoing, high in openness, but very low in conscientious. And again, this is very fascinating because he had a very difficult life as a child, but you don't discover that until later on in the movie. But when you actually introduce him, he's just driving, cars and parking cars for this place. And he has Aquafina, who plays this other character, one of his best friends. And they live a very simple life, right? Just parking cars and stuff like that. And right when they're at the end of the night, when they're supposed to go home and sleep because they have to work early in the next morning, guess what they do? They said, forget it, let's party. And then they go out to a karaoke bar and they're just jinking, living their best life, because guess what they're trying to do? They're trying to seek pleasure. And so what did the person who's a pleasure seeker or an epicure do, that false belief? They say that the world is full of pain and frustration and that they need to avoid that pain, right? And so that's why they're constantly seeking out pleasure. So what they've lost is the fundamental truth is life is a spectrum of all different possibilities. It's not just full of pain. It's pain, pleasure, it's all in balance. And you can experience all those different varieties freely if you have sustained concentration towards what you want, which I learned from reading different books about ascended masters and stuff like that. Like they have different ascended master laws, and one of them is, the law of life is what you think and what you feel and what you focus on, you put energy to, you end up manifesting, you end up creating. But the problem is most people are not always focused with the time of their thoughts and their feelings towards constructive action. It goes all over the place, right? And so how the pleasure seeker survives is they try to protect themselves from pain, right? Protect themselves from limits. I don't want to have any restrictions. They imagine all the possibilities and let's experience life. So they focus on pleasurable everything. Let's focus on pleasurable ideas. Let's focus on pleasurable projects. Let's go on pleasurable experiences. It's the big pleasure seeker. Okay, what is their strength? Oh my goodness, these people are really fun to be around. They're super playful, they're super enthusiastic, they're very imaginative, but guess what? What's their weakness? I'm bored, easily distracted. I need that stimulation, suffering, I'm pain, making excuses all the time. Hey, Tim, you were supposed to do this. I don't want to do it. I totally forgot. You don't understand. This drama happened in my life, and oh my goodness, it's like, wow, you're so willy-nilly, go with the flow that I can't count on you for anything. You're constantly making excuses just because life is happening to you, I've known people, I've worked with people like this, They're so focused on living the best life that it's like, but I can't rely on you, okay? Their blind spot is limits, okay? There are consequences, We are living in a human experience, right? There are limits. Like, if you party all night, guess what's going to happen? That is going to affect you the next day, That's out of integrity. You're using your body to the extreme by not getting enough sleep. You can actually have a car accident, I'm speaking from personal experience because I've done it. The dark side of life is, if you constantly seek out the pleasure of doing whatever feels good, well, guess what? Sometimes doing things that feels good can actually hurt somebody else, hurt other people. And that's a lot of pain. And so you get to experience the dark side of life by constantly focusing on what you feel good, right? So their communication style is, they're very positive people, very fast-paced, spontaneous, but they're super focused on themselves, right? So the goal in personal development for the pleasure seeker is that when they start a task, stop getting distracted and just complete that task, okay? And instead of focusing on yourself all the time, why don't you serve and focus on other people and how you can help, right? Learn to keep your responsibilities, keep your commitments, and this whole FOMO thing, just get over that, okay? We can all experience life in a positive way, and stop trying to fill in that pain with these outside experiences as if that's going to make you whole and complete, because guess what? It doesn't. All right? Stop it. So that's the personal and professional development for the pleasure seeker. So we're down to the last two, right? Protector, and then finally the mediator. So the protector, also known in other circles as the challenger, is somebody, according to the big five trait, is low in agreeableness, right? They're not trying to please other people, whatever. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. They're low in openness. They're very clear on what they need to get done, and not others. And they're high in conscientious because it's all about getting stuff done. So to me, Thor represents that person as the best protector. So if you've ever seen this movie, I was telling you about the battle between the frost giants and the Asgardians. Well, at one point, the frost giants break into Asgard and try to steal this casket, which we know later is actually holding one of the Infinity Stones, but it's a very high power source that they want. And as a result, Thor gets enraged, right? He's like, how dare they do that to us? And Odin, his father, basically says, no, like, you don't do that. Like, you're not supposed to go. Like, we have a truce within them. I know that they did this, but you know what? It's not a problem. But Thor can't help it. He has this whole sense of like, this is injustice. They tried to break into us. They need to be destroyed. And so he goes over there, breaks the truce that they had, even though that they were in the wrong. He still like fights them, and then Odin has to come and save him, right? And Odin saves them, breaks the truce, and he's so mad at Thor that he has to punish him. He says, you're not worthy. You have to go back to Earth. I'm taking my hammer away from you, and only when you're worthy and you learn humility will you get it back. And so he gets sent back to Earth, tries to get the hammer, and he can't pull it out, right? But he was just trying to protect, he was just focusing on the injustice and how dare they try to attack us. But again, you lost sight of something. So what is the protector came to believe? They believe that the world is unfair. The world is unjust. Guess what? The powerful people always take advantage of the little people, and that needs to stop, right? And so that's their programming. But what they've lost is the fundamental truth is that we all start out in innocence, right? And guess what? Every single person, if they're in touch with their higher selves, they can sense truth, right? They know what's truthful and what's false. You can't always lie to people because they can pick that up, right? So how does the protector survive? Well, I'm not going to get hurt by anybody. I'm going to become strong. I'm going to become powerful. I'm going to impose my own truth, and I'm not going to let them show that I'm weak. I'm going to hide my weaknesses because weak people get trampled on, right? So that's what they focus on: power, control, justice, injustice, and deception, manipulation, because it's all about getting what they want, because only the strongest survive. Well, there's some strengths in having a protector. They're very courageous people. They're very persistent. They're all about justice and fairness, so you know that they'll be fair with you. But guess what? What's their weakness? They're impulsive. They're very confrontational, right? And so what are their blind spots? They don't realize their actions and the impact on others and other people's truths. See, they're so focused on their own truth that it's black and white, but you don't understand because you don't understand someone else's perspective. You're blinded by that. You only see yourself, and you can't miss, and you're missing if you would just actually listen and understand another person's perspective, you might shift your beliefs. So their communication they're very direct, very authoritative, right? They're very fair and very energetic, but their goal of their personal development is they need to listen more than speak, okay? They also need to practice being vulnerable, and they have to avoid bias because they have very strong opinions, right? But you have only strong opinions from your perspective. Your task, your mission, should you choose to accept it, protectors, is to put yourself in the shoes of other people and really see it from their perspective. Because the moment that you do that, whoa, you'll learn that the world is so much grayer than you think, right? And you have to learn to compromise. It's not just always your way is the highway. And so here's the last one of the personality types. is the mediator, okay? Also known as the peacemaker, okay? So according to the big five traits of theories, this would be a person that's highly agreeable and high in openness. So the perfect example would be Bruce Banner, who also becomes the Hulk, right? So if you've ever seen the movie Avengers Age of Ultron, this really there's a scene that really demonstrates this, because what ends up happening is Tony Stark, in his performance mentality, he's like, I'm going to do whatever I need to do in order to protect Earth from the bad guys. He actually creates a super intelligence robot that named Ultron, and now Ultron is trying to destroy humanity. Uh-oh. See what happens? And Thor, again in his challenger protector mode, he's like, how dare you, Tony Stark? You didn't even think about what you did. Again, chastising him for what he's done. And then at one point, Tony Stark basically says, well, listen up, well, what we need, and guess what? As soon as he starts talking, Bruce Banner says to Tony, maybe now is not the time for us to bring this up, and then Tony snaps back at him. He's like, really, Bruce, you just roll over your belly every time somebody snarls at you? And his response is, well, especially when we've created a murderous robot, like he's actually understanding the pain that they've caused, the damage that they've caused by doing what they've done. So do you see, like, Bruce is always trying to say, can you calm down a little bit? Can you just relax? And so he's trying to be the peacemaker. He's trying to be the mediator. So what is the false belief for the mediator that they came to believe? What's their programming? You are unimportant, and that's really unfortunate. Other people are more important. So in order for you to survive, you must blend in. And you care more about belonging to a social group than your own self-worth. That's why Tony was basically saying, why are you constantly showing your belly? Speak up for yourself, right? So what's the fundamental truth that they lost is that everybody belongs equally in unconditional love, right? That means you are entitled for unconditional love. Everybody belongs, right? And it's not about some people are worth more, value more than others. We're all conscious beings in the universe. And you forgot how important you are and that you are loved. Okay, so how does the mediator survive? They forget themselves. They're not focusing on themselves. They're focusing on other people. So by focusing on other people, then they'll be loved, right? They're focusing on other people's agendas, other people's requests, other people's demands. And so what is their strength? These people are great at empathy. They're really, really supportive people, really good at adapting to the different situations. But what is their weaknesses? They don't say no. They don't set boundaries, okay? And because, just like we were talking about the high agreeableness of a person, when you're so agreeable and you're constantly trying to focus on other people and not yourself, guess what you build up? Resentment. And then sometimes you'll be very passive, and then, whoa, then you're like really aggressive. You're like, what the hell did that come from? It's because you're holding up. You just can't take it anymore. And then that's why you occasionally explode. You're like, oh, I thought you were so sweet and nice. It's like, I just can't take it anymore, And so they're blind spots is, hey, what you feel and what you think is really important, okay? And your priorities matter. Stop always focusing on other people's priorities. You need to listen to your own higher self and your own needs. How do they communicate with people? They're very steady, very easygoing people. Oh, I'm so friendly. I don't want to fight. They don't want to have any confrontation. But what is their goal of their own personal and professional development? They need to focus on themselves first. You need to get in touch with your needs. You need to get in touch with your feelings. And so oftentimes peacemakers try to suppress their anger. Oh, it's not good to be angry. No, okay? Your anger, if you're feeling angry about something, it's a signal, all right? Your task is to figure out what that signal is communicating to you. There is something off here. By you silencing it, by you suppressing it, is not a good thing, right? You need to help figure that out and discover what that is. And also, you have to learn how to accept discomfort, okay? So can you imagine, like, in a relationship where you have one that's dominating and the one's always saying whatever you want, but guess what happens? This person is not growing, and this one is being enabled to do whatever they want. So sometimes arguments need to happen, confrontations need to happen. I hate to say it, geopolitical tensions, threats, and stuff like that, because guess what? The world needs sometimes conflict in order to come to resolution, right? And so for some people, if you're the peacemaker, you're like, no, don't fight, don't fight. Well, it's like, listen, stop it, peacemaker. These people need to vocalize what they feel inside right now, because it's poison that's eating them up in the inside. And you constantly shushing them from fighting and suppressing it is not letting it come out. You're actually doing a disservice. So stop it, right? Accept that this is an uncomfortable thing, but know that it serves the highest good, because everything happens in exactly the way it needs to happen as part of God's perfection, okay? You need to learn to love yourself, okay? If you don't love yourself, you're going to constantly put other people's needs ahead of your own, and you're going to suppress it. No, you matter. Okay, so this is my message to all those peacemakers, those highly agreeable people, right? I know, because I'm one of these people, right? Every one of us, has these different parts of ourselves. This is your self-development. This is the class right now. This is the work you have to do on yourself. Okay, so let's recap. All right, again, I'm not going to recap all the Enneagram types and stuff like that. You just know that perfection gives performance, romantic and idealistic notions, right? So the perfectionist, if you had one goal for development, it would be you are perfect exactly the way you are. And people are perfect exactly the way they are. Stop trying to change them. Yes, you have your right way to do something, but it's not the only way. Learn to accept yourselves and others, and just understand that they're good enough. For the givers who are always helping other people, okay, wake up. It's time for you to start focusing on yourself. What are your needs? And stop feeling guilty about it, okay? And you need to say no a lot more. For the performer who always get stuff done, no. Love comes not just from the things that you do, it's from who you are being. Who are you going to be, right? So what are the affirmations that you tell yourself every morning on who are you creating yourself to be? I'll tell you mine. For those of you who have been with Elective Society for a lot, know I am love, I am fun, and I am empowerment. That's who I am. That's constantly who I'm trying to create myself to be, right? And by me creating that, it means I'll get results. Sometimes I'll fail, sometimes I'll succeed, but I'll just do my best. You are not just what you do, it's who you are. So don't forget to slow down, smell the roses, and enjoy life. For the romantic and idealists who are constantly searching for the most beautiful, amazing ideas, perfection, art, and stuff, calm down. Focus on the present moment. We are all love. You are whole, complete. Stop trying to find what's missing. Stop searching for the ideal. It won't make you complete and whole. You have to love yourself. For the investigating loyal skeptics, provides pleasurable protection. The investigator, there's a sufficient supply of energy and resources for everybody in the world, okay? You need to express your feelings. Stop operating in the intellectual. Learn to be vulnerable, and just practice that you don't know everything. Be humble. For the loyal skeptics, reclaim your faith. Faith in yourself and faith in other people. Have the courage to just take positive action despite the fear that you're feeling. For the pleasure seekers, stop going with the flow. All right, you need to focus on a task and complete it, because you gave your word to do it. Stop focusing on other people, all right, and keep your commitments and responsibility. It builds character, okay? You don't always have to have FOMO. You don't always have to have vacation every other time. You don't always need that, right? You're trying to replace something else. Learn to love yourself. Learn to be by yourself. Learn to do what is your own goal that serves the highest good, and take constructive actions. For the protector, you need to stop doing more and start listening more. Be vulnerable, avoid your own biases, and you need to start compromising. Stop trying to control and force your opinions and ideas on other people. And the last one is the mediator. Focus on your needs and feelings. Anger is a signal that something is off. Accept the discomfort and love yourself. So that completes the training and the 9 Enneagram different types. I hope that this is eye-opening for you. I just wanted to share some final announcements. Please, if you love this training and love the trainings that we do with Electa Society, become a supporter of Electa Society. It's a 501c3 non-for-profit. If you actually start contributing, even if a small amount for the price of a coffee, you get $2,000 more worth of gifts. I'm just going to highlight some of them. If you just go to buy me a coffee, or I say, or tea, because that's what I drink, .com/Electa Society, you can make a tax deductible contribution. So you can either do $5 a month to just join as a supporter. If you're a working professional, you can donate $10 a month and you get access to all these gifts. Or you just make a one-time donation. And then here are the free gifts that you're going to get. My book that I wrote, The Oracle, Ancient Wisdom for Changing Your Life in the World. That's an ebook that you get as a gift for becoming a supporter. I have a list of all my VIP contacts of lawyers, coaches, and experts in non-for-profit and business consultations, and like trusted influencers that I listen to that to help you to navigate and find the truth, and also to help you with whatever you're working on. And then I always like to give gifts every year to my supporters of Electa Society. So mostly my gifts right now are digital gifts because we're still growing as a community in Electa Society. So any books that I read, I will create summary notes so that you can get those ideas and digest it from all the different books I've had, different trainings. And one of the gifts that I'm in the process of developing, it should be done in about a week or so, all these Enneagram best practices and tips and things. This was just the iceberg tip. There's a lot more. So I want to give it as a gift, my detailed notes for those people who are supporters of Electa Society. So if you really love this training and you want even more, then and you're not already a supporter, please do so. And I'll send you, a copy of my personalized notes on all the Enneagram types. So that completes our training. At this point, I'll take any questions that you might have. If you can, I would love for you, if you're watching this video, to take out your camera. There's the link for you to actually do a survey. I like to say, what did you like about the presentation? What can we do to improve it? How would we rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? Because I always like to make changes and improvements. As a gift for you to take the time to fill out a 1 or 2 minute survey, you can, as soon as you do that Google survey, a thank you page will pop up and you'll get a PDF copy of this entire PowerPoint so that you can have it as a notes. So I put in the chat the actual link for the Google survey. So does anybody here who is joining us live have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat. All right. Well, that concludes our training. Thank you so much. I hope you found this information very valuable. Thank you for increasing your self-awareness by doing this Electa Society training. Please become a supporter if you aren't already, do so you can get gifts all the times. And I appreciate, love you all. Thank you. And let's go out into the world and be the light, and also take constructive actions and to love each other and everybody else. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching this video clip about conscious leadership. If you are committed to helping to create more conscious leaders in this world, that is, leaders with more humility, more integrity, more awareness, that take constructive action, then consider helping us by making a donation. Our goal is to have 600 conscious leaders develop before the end of this year. Currently, as of December 1st, we already have 400 members. And again, with your help, we can grow even further. How can you help us? Simply make a donation. If you visit buymeacoffee.com/Electa Society, you can either choose to give a monthly donation and join, and you get different access to a lot of these different membership benefits, or simply make a one-time donation. Click on the heart support button, choose 1, 3, 5, or type in any amount of coffees. Hit the support button and you can upload your card information on the secure platform. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and let's continue our mission of building more leaders. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.